and welcome to the Hypnotize Me podcast, the podcast about hypnosis, transformation, and healing. This is Dr. Liz. This is airing in June 2017, and we just went over 10,000 downloads. And I am so happy about this. I know these are small numbers compared to like big, huge, gigantic podcasts. But for just an individual running her own little podcast, trying to get the word out about hypnosis, these feel like a miracle. So I wanted to thank you so much for listening, subscribing, downloading, sharing it with friends, tweeting it, all of that stuff. I really do appreciate it. And in the month of June 2017, I'm running a contest. Woo! Love contests for reviews, because reviews is often how the networks will present your podcast to new people to listen to. If you have a lot of good reviews, they're more likely to do that. So if you write a review in June 2017, send that review to me, send me your username, tell me what platform you put it on, email that to DrLiz at DrLiz-Hypnosis.com. That's DrLiz at DrLiz-Hypnosis.com. And I'm going to put your name into a drawing to win a t-shirt. A Hypnotize Me podcast t-shirt. The logo is really cute. You all know that. So I am happy to send you a t-shirt in whatever size you are, wherever you are listening to this. This is being listened to in 61 countries. So I'm so pleased about that all over the world, people are learning about hypnosis. So that's the June contest. And feel free to share that with friends and loved ones, whoever you want to share it with, even strangers, right? Just kidding. All right. This is a review from Annie Therapist. I love the tone of the podcast. Hypnosis might seem intimidating or out of reach, but she makes it feel interesting and accessible. And she gave it 5 stars. Thank you, Annie Therapist. That's just an example of a review. People often think of them as like these paragraph long reviews, but they can be like 1 or 2 lines. It totally counts. Just please make sure it's honest. So let's jump into our interview with Jackie Flynn. She is a play therapist, and she also does couples therapy up in Central Florida. And she runs a huge podcast, which originally was called Parenting in the Rain, is now called Play Therapy Community. So she's an amazing person to talk to about children and hypnosis and how she uses hypnosis with children. That's what we're going to learn in this episode. But also she talks a lot about the brain development and how to integrate the 2 sides of the brain. That is really interesting. I think you'll enjoy it. She also talks about when she uses hypnosis with children and a little bit about how she uses it with children. So hi, Jackie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. It's such an honor. You know, I'm a huge fan of yours.
Thank you. I really love your podcast too. I have told the listeners before we started our interview that you run the Play Therapy Community podcast, and I've gotten just so much information from it around parenting, and it's just a wonderful podcast. It really is.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Let's start with a question I ask most professional hypnotherapists. What was your own first experience with hypnotherapy or hypnosis?
Well, how I first got interested in it was actually on a personal level. My parents were smokers for a long time, 30 years-ish each, and they both got hypnotized and they were successful. Even my dad tried to start back smoking again and he was unsuccessful at trying back. So I was really impressed and really grateful to just the fact that that was even available. So as I become a licensed mental health counselor here in Central Florida, I thought, I want to incorporate that in my practice. For one, I know it helps and it works. And 2, I'm really interested in it. I just really want to be able to offer that to my clients. So in the beginning, I primarily worked with children and teens and families. So I started using this stuff after I went to my training in Clearwater, Florida. Really good. Actually, it wasn't Clearwater. It was Dr. Billette and Dr. Rainey. I can't remember exactly where it was at. But it was an excellent excellent training. And I walked away feeling like I knew a lot more than just another type of treatment. I felt like I had a better understanding of the mind and how it works and how it influences our everyday. It's good stuff. I loved it. We had experiential opportunities where we actually were hypnotized by each other and by them as a group, individual level. I really got to experience it in a big way.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. So tell me how you use it in your practice. You work mostly with teens and children, or do you also see adults?
Now I see adults. I have expanded over the years, but I definitely work a lot with children and adolescents and families now. And with the kids, the little ones, I use a lot of the framework of hypnosis, a lot of the pieces of it. So it may not look like in the traditional set, and sometimes you could do that with any age. Mm-hmm. But one of the goals there is to really kind of, they call it depotentiate their conscious sets. It's a piece of Erickson's work.
Can you break that down for the casual listener?
Yeah, it sounds so. I remember the first time I heard that, I thought, what language are they speaking? I don't even know what that means. Right. So depotentiate is just kind of shake it up. We all have beliefs about ourselves, really limiting beliefs in many cases, like we can do this because of this, and we can't do that because of that. I can't run a marathon because I broke my leg when I was 20 years old. Those type of beliefs that can really limit us. So those are conscious sets, and those are just things that we believe about ourselves. So when you can depotentiate and really just challenge and shake that up to where that's not running the show, then you can do some work there that can push people past their point that they believe to be true. That makes it sound like, you're really thinking that that you can't, because you have the IEP, that you can't do this class. And then you start from there, kind of meet them where they're at, and then you say some things to knock their conscious brain kind of out of that stuck point.
Okay, fascinating. So can you paint us more of a picture of what this would look like? So let's start with, let's say a child walks into your play therapy room. I know you do a lot of work with sand tray, right?
Yes, I love it.
I know. I love the sand tray and the miniatures too. It's So paint a picture for parents, all right, a child walks into my office and this is what it looks like. And they grab a character from the bookshelf, a little tiny character or some objects, and bring it into the sand tray and they start to play. Mm-hmm. And then you begin to talk to them and you're working in challenging these limiting beliefs. Is that basically how it goes down?
Yes. Okay. So with that scenario, suppose that they grab something, and sometimes it may be even a little bit more directive than that. Traditionally, that's how, at least the way that I do hypnotherapy goes. If I really want to shake them up, I may grab, say, an elephant, a baby elephant and a mother elephant. For some reason, I have 5 elephants on the shelf. But and then I'll put those in the sand tray, and I'll say, when a baby elephant is really tiny in some places, they will use a rope and tie it to a stake to keep it put so it doesn't go out and wander around in unsafe positions. And they'll say, yeah. And usually, there's that acknowledgement that, hey, that's really sad to be kind of tied to a stake. And yeah, that must be really hard on that little baby elephant. Well, as that baby elephant grows up, it can still be tied to that same stake, even though it's much stronger, much wiser, much larger, much more developed. That same little tiny rope and that little stake can keep it put. And they're like, why doesn't it just pull away? So I wonder why. And that's like that depotentiating the conscious set. We don't actually, say explicitly that it doesn't pull away from the stake because at a real early age it learned that it couldn't move it, and now it doesn't even try to move it. But as their story comes out in the sand tray, I think, or I might say something like, that's like that elephant. I wonder what would happen if that elephant just pulled on that stake a little bit harder. So it's really speaking to that unconscious mind and surpassing that learned limitation that is in their conscious mind. So shaking it up a bit and making those suggestions in real small ways that can integrate into their unconscious mind. And that's where you really get the change. I love that metaphor of an iceberg where you can see the tip of the iceberg and it's big and pointy and rough, but underneath the water line there's this big giant part of the iceberg, and you'll kind of separate that into the conscious and the unconscious mind. So when, like with that elephant metaphor, and as I'm setting the stage for it with the miniatures in the sand tray, but I can use pieces of that metaphor once they have it in their unconscious mind to really address that bottom part of the iceberg and go deeper. And even weeks later, I may say, it sounds like you're pulling on that stake a little bit. I wonder if your stake is loose. And so it may not look like the traditional laying on the couch. They go into a full trance, and, it's that, the way that I would traditionally work with adults. Mm-hmm. But it's very powerful. And they may even come in at a later session and say, I pulled on my stake yesterday.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It's really cool.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful, actually, a beautiful metaphor to work through. So you often do setups for them in your sand tray depending on what the child's working on?
Yes, it's not like always that directive, but it mostly is because of sometimes they may, have something in there that fits. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's most powerful is when it's their metaphor. But sometimes they have to be nudged a little bit, especially if their limited beliefs are like in concrete. And I see that a lot with kids that have anxiety.
Gotcha. They believe that they can't really change this, that there's somehow something wrong with them. And
yeah, I'm defective.
Part of your job is to question that and let them know they're perfect little tiny human beings and they're just struggling with something.
Yeah, and the limited belief there, sometimes unknowingly parents, they mean well when they are really, trying to help them, but it kind of sets into limited belief of, I had anxiety when I was a kid and you have anxiety. I couldn't do these things and you probably won't be able to do them either. And I think they're really trying to support them in a way of normalizing it and letting the kid know that, hey, I understand. But on the another side of that, it gives that limited belief to the kid that, okay, this is who I am, rather than something that I deal with. And when you have somebody take it on as part of them rather than a behavior that they're exhibiting or something that they can fix, then it gets a little more stuck. And that's where that hypnosis is really powerful, because those lighter interventions aren't necessarily effective at that point, because it's just so set in that belief that, I'm like my mom or I'm like my dad. I'm just destined to be like this and I can't change.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely see that in adults as well. But they've held that belief obviously for much longer. So when you're intervening with children, you get to intervene so much earlier, like they don't have to believe that the rest of their life, which is really an incredible benefit of treatment that I think people don't often think about. Like parents bring them in saying, this is going on and I want to help them feel better, do better, all of this. But they're not consciously walking in saying, I really want them to believe something different about themselves, that they have the ability to change and break free from the stake and do all of these things that I know they can do.
Oh my goodness, yes. Parents usually when they come in, they really, really, I say usually, I've never seen it not the case, and I'm a parent myself, they really want the best for their child. And they come in at the point of, please help. I've tried so many things. I just need some help and support. So that's why my work with children and adolescents involves a big parent consultation component, because a lot of this is not common sense. Parenting is tough.
Yes.
It's like the hardest job in the world.
Totally. Yeah.
And there are some things that you think, gosh, why isn't this working? And it's not. So, I pull from the research a lot, because I remember before I got into all this information and I was working in other fields, I was doing things that, I would never do now, and it just feels good to have that information for parents. But I usually work with the child or the teen for 60 minutes, and then I usually chat with the parent for 30 minutes on the phone, usually after the kid goes to bed if they're younger kids. We'll chat, still keeping that confidentiality, but a lot of times I'll draw on my tenets that I use in my child-parent relationship therapy sessions, on what's supportive, and, different books that I've read, like Dr. Siegel and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So tell me how does it differ, hypnosis for like the little child versus the teen?
Now, with teens really vary in their level of acceptance and their level of ability, especially if the teen has like focus issues. We may not get to that point where they are able just to lay down and relax. But for the child, for the, say, 9 and under, sorry about that, for 9 and under, we usually do that in direct mode with the pieces that I tell as they're working through their stuff in the play therapy or in the expressive arts therapy room. We'll do those pieces, and the trance can even be kind of set while they're working by kind of doing that monotone voice and really kind of getting them to that calm state to where they're not all wound up. And that definitely helps with people that are experiencing anxiety. So it's more kind of in motion with the little ones. With teens, sometimes it's in motion, and then sometimes it looks just like it does with an adult. So depending on where they're at, and as they move up, a 17-year-old is certainly different than a 13-year-old. I use the labyrinth sometimes for the trance work. I use the labyrinth like for a million different things. But I notice that when they use that double labyrinth, they're able to really kind of connect that right and that left hemisphere and get to a calm, connected, integrated state. And then our work is much more effective when they're there rather than, really kind of all over the place.
Oh, fascinating. So can you tell people what the labyrinth is? Like, are you talking about an actual structure you have? Or are you talking metaphorically?
No, it's an actual structure. I love it. I purchased it it's been about 3.5 years ago. I use it literally in every session, whether it's hypnosis or EMDR or any of the work that I do. It is like 2 big mazes side by side, and simultaneously they use their right and their left hand to move through the maze on a mirror image. And what that does, it synchronizes that right and that left hemisphere of the brain, and does kind of like a hemispherical handshake is what I think of it as. Your right side of your brain really works with emotions, and it can feel, and just be so overwhelmed sometimes with all these big emotions, especially for kids. A lot of times that's their dominant part of the brain, especially if they're real little, like 4, 3, 2. You really see those big emotions. That's why they kind of wander around and awe, and they're like, oh, look at the beautiful flowers. And they have no sense of urgency. They're just kind of enjoying the world, which I wish we could all get to that place at some time as love.
Definitely. They're so cute. Like even a squirrel is so exciting to them, right?
Yeah. As we develop, sometimes that sense of wonder and awe kind of gets a little bit dulled as our left brain starts to emerge. But that right side really feels. And then the left side really is like that logical, literal, analytical, that thinking part. When we get really overwhelmed and things are really tough, a lot of times those two sides will work independently, and sometimes they can be on full blast, both at the same time, but not connecting. So we have this little bridge in between both hemispheres, the corpus callosum, that the information flow needs to occur. And when I say it's not connecting, it's not like 100% not connecting, but not at an optimal rate. When you can integrate the two, and I do that through a labyrinth, but there's other ways as well, it's kind of like stirring the milk in the coffee. You have that horizontal integration to where your thoughts and your feelings can mix together. And when I think of it from, say, like a DBT perspective, that, she talks about your wise mind.
Yeah, pause just for a minute. DBT is dialectical behavior therapy for listeners who don't know. Marcia Linehan is the creator of it, and she talks about, you're saying, the wise mind.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, all of that thought of we really need to use more parts of our brain than just one to be able to make decisions. So that's really, that labyrinth serves a few different purposes. It definitely calms, but it integrates that brain to where we're not just functioning from our feeling and we're not just functioning from our thinking. We are combining those two, like stirring the milk in the coffee. We're integrating them. And then when we can integrate it, we're at a much better state. So I don't know if you've ever read Mindsight from Dr. Siegel. I love his work.
Yeah.
But he talks about that power of horizontal integration and vertical integration, which you can get from play therapy when you integrate that hypnosis into it. It just takes it to a more powerful level, especially horizontally.
Fascinating. I'll put his book in the show notes for listeners as well. I've read another one of his books, but I don't think I've read Mindsight in particular.
Yeah, Mindsight's good. Whole Brain Child is the best. And then that no drama discipline. The Whole Brain Child really, it's great for anybody, but especially for parents of young children. It really teaches them how the brain works. And when you know how the brain works, then you can kind of change what the brain does, and you can respond in a way that is helpful, not only in making your life better in the moment, but you can really help that child to have a brain that is developed in a way that helps them to be successful in so many different ways. And that no trauma discipline is great for the older kids, say maybe like 11 to, all the way up. And it can even, those tenets can even be used for adults. I mean, just that understanding of the brain is helpful in any way.
Yeah, it's a great title, right? No drama discipline. Absolutely.
Yeah, everybody likes that thought of a calm life. I know I do.
Totally, particularly for like preteens and teens.
Yeah, and he has an excellent book called Brainstorm, which is also written like I'm a commercial for him. I love his work. I have no affiliation with him at all. I wish I did. But he wrote this book, Brainstorm, and it's written for parent and child to read together. It's really, really good. And again, it teaches the child and the parent and whoever's reading it just that real good understanding of the brain. It can be life-changing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay, so to get back to hypnosis, are there problems that you would say are not appropriate for hypnosis? This is what I hear sometimes from parents. Can I bring the kid in and this is sort of a magic solution, hypnosis, right? Mm-hmm. Can you talk about typical things that it's really not appropriate for versus things that, yes, hypnosis can definitely help with this?
Hmm. Now, there definitely are some things I don't use it for, but I've read that it can be used for a wide variety of things. One of the things that I really prefer to use it for is anxiety and depression,
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature, and like that feelings of self-worth. That to me really connects with that limiting belief piece, as well as helps with that integration of both hemispheres of the brain. And there's some things I don't use it for, and that's for things like, bedwetting, and like learning problems. Fear of the dark is kind of on the fence for me, but
Mm-hmm.
it has been used successfully with some practitioners. I just use a different approach for those things. But I definitely prefer it for anxiety and depression, and sometimes incorporate the visualization, like the puppets and the stories and role playing with that, active in the play. But it certainly can be used for lots more than I use it for, I think.
Yeah, those are some good guidelines, though. I found the same thing in the research around learning, like learning problems. So
Yeah.
I would agree with you there. I was just looking at some of those studies.
What I've really found to be true, and I definitely learned this when I was going to school and grad school, is that the biggest piece of whether anything that you do with a client is successful or not is that therapeutic relationship. So it's really important to establish that and get a good fit. So for the parents listening or the clinicians listening, just making sure that the child is comfortable with the therapist is huge. That's like one of the biggest components of whether anything's going to work or not, but especially hypnosis.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know there was times when I was seeing a child and really it's like a teen. And I said to the parent, like, she doesn't want to be here. Like, this isn't going to work because she doesn't want to be in therapy. She just doesn't want to talk. Like, none of that, after a couple of sessions of seeing if maybe they could warm up. But, I agree with you. The fit is really important, and whether the child feels comfortable with the therapist and in the office and wants to do some of that type of learning. Really, it's a learning process and work.
Yeah, and I've worked with resistant teens before too. Part of me says, you got to roll with that resistance and just help them out. But there's certainly a part of, okay, you got to be clear, like you said you were with the parents, just really upfront saying, I love the thought of you coming here, but I don't think that this is the time. They're definitely not wanting to be here, and there's that resistance piece. So sometimes it just say, giving them referrals to other places and see if there's maybe a different fit or a different type of therapy they want, or just helping with that child-parent relationship can make a big difference too, with especially teens that are resistant.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Because sometimes it may be the place or the therapist, or I'm not assuming that it wasn't me, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And as wonderful as you are and I am, we're not the best fit for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Kind of like coming to terms with that makes things a lot easier.
Yeah. But
Like
sometimes
with
it is sometimes it is the teen. They don't want to be there. I remember I sent a friend to one of my colleagues for her son, and she said when he was there, he actually did a lot better. Like his behavior better, everything helped. But then he stopped wanting to go. And she's like, he's 15 and 6'1". I can't force him to go to therapy. It's like, yeah, I gotcha. Right?
Yeah, it makes me think, over the years, I've definitely had some kids that the parents will come in and be like, they won't get out of the car. And I'm thinking, okay, that happens sometimes. And, I've been known to kind of go out there and kind of break the ice, and that'll work. But sometimes it's just not the right time, or, there's some other work that needs to be done, and you want to keep that level of, just healthiness, respect, if they're not going to come in, we're not going to try to pull them in.
Right. Definitely. It's true. I want to ask about the work you're doing professionally in terms of your play therapy community. I know you run a community for play therapists, correct?
Yes, yes. Actually, it's for just clinicians and professionals that work with children and families. A lot of people have misconception, I know I certainly did, about what play therapy is. So I wanted to demystify it, but also have information for clinicians out there that are play therapists that maybe that don't have the other information. So it's a wide array of stuff. Like many of the guests that I have on there are not play therapists that are just really helping the people listen, learn more, and really get a bigger vast of tools that they can pull from in their work. So like my last couple of episodes were on suicide prevention, and then I have one coming up on family meetings and sibling rivalry with Mercedes, and then with Dr. Kat, maternal health. So it's kind of like all over the place when to refer to a school counselor. And then Katie May is going to talk about group therapy. So it's for professionals, not even just clinicians. I have some occupational therapists in there. I have some educators in there. And there's also some parents, because I transitioned over from my Parenting in the Rain podcast, that was episode 50. So I have some loyal listeners there as well.
Gotcha. I was thinking, though, more about the mastermind group that you run.
Yeah, I'm excited. That hasn't actually started. It's getting ready to start really soon.
Oh, great.
I'm really excited about that. That's a group of professionals that really just want to take their work to a bigger level to help a wider variety of people. So those that are interested in, say, creating online courses or ebooks, or writing the book in a traditional form, or maybe doing consulting work. I have an online business called Jackie Flynn Consulting. When you work in a mastermind, which is just a collection of professionals meeting together and sharing ideas, but also just kind of talking things out, you create like a synergy, and you can do more than you could have done alone.
Definitely. Okay, so to clarify for the listeners, there's this one piece mastermind that is for clinicians and consulting piece there. And then the other piece is the podcast that you run, which used to be Parenting in the Rain, and now it's the Play Therapy Community.
Yes.
And that also has a Facebook group that people can join and be a part of, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, gotcha. We're getting to the end of our time. So can you tell people how to find you and how to listen to your wonderful podcast?
Oh, thank you for saying that. You can find me at playtherapycommunity.com, or my private practice website, counselinginbrevard.com. And also, shoot me an email at jackieflynnconsulting.com. And also, I have a couple of free Facebook groups that go along with the podcast. I have Play Therapy Community. You could just search for that in Facebook. And then Parenting in the Rain Community. Both of those are active, and I'd love to have you in there. And also, I have a Twitter too. It's at Jackie Flynn RPT for registered play therapist.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So I will put all of those in the show notes as well. I'll put links to the Facebook groups where people can request to join, and links to your podcast so that they can see where to go and how to contact you as well. So thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
So my biggest takeaway from this interview was instilling in the child the belief that they can change, that they can adapt, adjust, they can break free from limiting beliefs, that they are not one way. And we used to believe that personality was like a stable thing that didn't change over someone's lifetime. But some more recent research, a study that came out, I think it was this year or last year, that studied people over like a crazy long period of time, 50, 60 years or something, found that personality is not stable. People change. They have life events. that change their whole lives and how they think about things and how they handle things. I think most people in recovery will tell you that as well. Like they go into recovery, they become a different person. They handle things differently. They think differently. They do all kinds of things differently. That's personality change. And the same thing is true of our children. So yes, let's say you have a child that's stubborn and you're like, you're so stubborn, don't assume they're always going to be that way, or don't tell them they're always going to be that way. They have the ability to change. And that was just such a lovely message. I loved also hearing about the stories. She tells that I could just picture Jackie's office with the sand tray and the mama elephant and the little elephant and that whole scenario going on. When I worked a lot with parents, I would tell them, use a dollhouse at home. Like you can use a dollhouse, a barn, the little people houses, whatever it is. The garage, I know little boys often have those like little wooden play garages, whatever it is, get some people in there, get some things in there and set it up the night before while they're asleep. If you know your child is working on something, set up a scenario with the little people in the cars or the little people in the kitchen or whatever it is. And then play with them the next day. Spend 10, 15 minutes playing with them, introducing alternative ways that the little people in the houses could choose to behave or act or feel or validate their feelings and see what comes up. It's actually a really fun part of parenting for me when my kids were little. So try that at home. All right, people, I'll talk to you next week. Peace. If you like this episode, do me a favor and rate, review, and subscribe on whatever player you like, or even better, tell a friend so that more and more people learn about hypnosis and how it can be helpful for them. If you want to know more about me, head over to DrLiz-Hypnosis.com. That's DrLiz Hypnosis.com. You can see the downloads and see if there's one that's helpful for your life. Or you could also join the newsletter and get a couple of free files as well as lots of good content. I've written a newsletter for well over 10 years. Go ahead and subscribe and join the rest of the world. All right, people, have a wonderful week.